There are three main obstacles to buying a house in today's market: price, interest rates, and property taxes. Now, there are ways past each one of these, and that's exactly what I'm going to go over in this video. But none of that matters unless you decide that buying a house is a high priority. Here's an example of what you're up against. According to Yahoo Finance, it is more expensive to buy a house than it is to rent in all but 4 U.S. cities. Now, some of what I'm going to go over in this video today is going to show that information like this is not 100% accurate. But even if it was, is the cheapest route always the best route? Especially if you're thinking long-term. It's cheaper to buy a bike than it is to buy a car, right? It's also cheaper to skip college than it is to spend 4 years getting a degree. But if someone chose the more expensive route, whether it be a car or a college education or a house, isn't there a realistic expectation, though, that those higher costs now will lead to more opportunities and better returns in the future? Now, only you can make the decision whether or not buying a house is a high priority. But if that's what you choose, then you're going to need to stop focusing on the obstacles and start focusing on how to get past them. Now, the first obstacle you're going to need to overcome is your perception of home prices. In today's market, there is a huge difference between a perceived value and market value. We went through an unprecedented price run-up between 2020 and 2022. Now, this was driven by very high buyer demand, very low inventory of homes available for sale, and ultra-low interest rates that enabled everybody to increase their buying power. Now, when interest rates started to go up about a year or so ago, a lot of buyers dropped out of the market completely. Now, the law of supply and demand works both ways. So when that buyer demand started to decrease, prices began to come down in response to that. We have reached a point where prices seem to have stabilized, but there are a lot of sellers who, how can I say this, they have an overly optimistic opinion of what their house is actually worth and how much money they're going to get if they decide to sell it. Now, this is just the opposite on the buyer side, because so many buyers still think that prices are as elevated as they were 2 years ago. There has been a significant drop in home values over this last year. Depending on the area you're looking in, a house will sell anywhere between 25 and 40% less today than it would have sold for last summer. Now, the individual sellers who are attempting to sell their home are very slow in accepting this fact, but home builders have adapted and have adjusted their prices accordingly. Right now, the prices on new homes is probably the best gauge of true market value. And based on what I'm seeing, new construction is where you should be looking if you think about buying a house. Now, think about it. If you can walk into the builder's sales office and buy a brand new home for $400,000, why in the world would you go across the street to the older phases of the exact same development and pay more for a 5 or 10-year-old house? Until those individual sellers are willing to accept the realities of the market and adjust their prices accordingly, the builders are going to have the best deals. Now, realistically, if you have to be under $400,000, you're probably going to need to be looking outside the city of Austin, unless you want to look at some type of fixer-upper. To the north, in areas like Georgetown or Hutto or Taylor, you're still about a 30-minute commute to downtown Austin, but you're going to see home values at or even slightly below that $400,000 price point. If you go south to areas like Kyle, you can find new houses under $300,000. You know, I make these videos to provide information to enable you to make better decisions when you're buying or selling real estate. But the only way I'll know if you like them or if you find them useful is if you comment on the video, like the video, or subscribe to my channel. Also, if you think about buying or selling real estate here in the Austin area, I would love to help you out. Shoot me a text or an email, or schedule a phone call on the YouTube channel page. But enough about that. Let's talk about the second major obstacle that you're going to encounter if you're thinking about buying a house in today's market: interest rates. They have been fluctuating between 6 and 7% for about 6 months now. When they drop close to 6%, mortgage applications go up. And when they inch back up closer to 7%, mortgage applications go down. But here's a question for you. Where can you find the best deals on mortgage rates? Well, once again, it's the home builders. Every one of the national builders has their own mortgage company. And if you finance a house with their lender, you could get rates around 5%. Now let that sink in. If you're going to have to pay 7% on a resale home, but you can get 5% on a new home, that increases your buying power by 20%. The math is that to keep your payment the same, for every single percentage point that the mortgage rate goes either up or down, you're going to need to adjust the amount financed by about 10%. So if you can get a lower price on a new home, and you can also get a lower interest rate if you finance through the builder's lender, why aren't more people looking at new construction in today's market? To be honest, I don't know. Maybe buyers don't realize how much the market has changed. Or maybe they're reading news stories about something that happened 6 months ago. I do know this: builders have not slowed down building new homes, and none of these builders want to get stuck with a lot of unsold inventory. A couple years ago, the builders would release the house before the foundation was even poured, which meant that buyer would have to wait 6 to 9 months before the house is ready to move in. In today's market, the builder doesn't release the house until it's complete or very close to complete. which means that at most you're going to be waiting 30 to 60 days before you can move in on that new house. Now, the reason they do it that way is that if buyer demand heats back up again, those builders are going to be able to raise the prices again. So they don't want to lock themselves into a price that might go up while the house is being built. In other words, the longer you wait to look at all the options available in new construction today, the shorter that window is going to become if buyer demand picks back up. Now, the final obstacle you're going to need to overcome if you think about buying a house are property taxes. Now, you are never going to be able to avoid paying property taxes, but if you understand how property taxes work here in Texas, you're going to be much more informed and able to make better decisions. Your property tax bill is calculated by multiplying the appraised value of the house by the tax rate. Almost the entire Austin Metro is going to have a tax rate between 2 and 3%. And whatever your tax rate is, you're not going to be able to change it. The biggest fluctuations of these last couple of years has been those appraised values. The appraisal district will send you a notice early part of the year which tells you how much they appraise your house to be worth. And if you don't agree with that amount, you have the option of protesting it. Now, if you bought the house for $500,000, it's going to be pretty hard to argue that the house is worth less than that when it comes time to pay taxes. On the other hand, though, is if you paid $500,000 for the house and the appraisal comes in at $7,000, that would be pretty solid evidence for an adjustment if you decide to protest that appraised amount. Now, if you finance the house, your taxes are going to be included in your monthly mortgage payment. As an example, if your total estimated taxes were $6,000, that would mean that $500 a month from your mortgage payment would be going towards the taxes. Now, the mortgage company will calculate all this for you and get you approved for the total mortgage payment. Now, one thing to be aware of is that if the house is going to be your primary residence, you could apply for the Homestead Exemption. This will give you a slight reduction in the appraised value, but the biggest advantage is going to cap your year-over-year increase to only 10%. In other words, even if the house doubled in value, the maximum amount your taxes could increase is only 10%. Now that you understand the 3 major obstacles you're going to encounter if you decide to buy a house, this video will walk you through the 5 steps that you're going to need to take in order to buy it. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and ring the bell. That way you'll get a notification every time I post a new video.